Hi, I'm Rebecca Fougere with Konica Minolta Canada. I'm here at Cal Poly University in San Luis Obispo, California. Today, I'm meeting with Professor Frank Romano, a leading expert in the printing and publishing industry. Frank, it's so great to see you. Thanks so much for meeting with me today.
It's great to see you, Rebecca.
What is your relationship with the printing industry?
Well, I'm a teacher, and I teach all new technologies and old technologies. And that's my role, and it's been my role for the last 30 or 40 years. And in teaching some of the technologies, I need to write the books about them in many cases. So I research them with vendors throughout the industry. I have no relationships with vendors, and I try to keep my objectivity so that I can praise them and criticize them.
You're at Cal Poly teaching a course on digital printing.
Yes.
So how do you teach digital printing?
Very well.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
So again, I write my own textbooks. So I wrote one of the first books on digital printing, one of the first books on Inkjet, and this is how I educate my students. So we start out by looking at the history of the technology, and then we run the technology. At RIT, we had many of the machines. At Cal Poly, many of the machines are here, and students can do projects on them. They learn about workflow. So they learn by doing, and I think that's the key.
When did the evolution of digital technology start?
Well, digital goes back to the 1950s when A.B. Dick developed one of the first inkjet printers. But the first toner printers came in the 1970s, the late 70s. And the first desktop digital printer came in the early 1980s. And then color came in 1993. So it's been an interesting evolution. And it's taken years to get the technology to work properly and now to be acceptable by commercial printers. I think that's the key. Up to now, it didn't meet the quality standards. It didn't always meet the productivity standards. But now digital printing is mainstream. Commercial printers are applying it every day.
Would you say that Inkjet is changing the printing landscape?
Oh, absolutely. Again, we started with wide format, and then it evolved into flatbed. And now it's evolving into traditional commercial printing. And it started out with roll-fed, and that's okay for longer runs. But when you really want to handle commercial work, you've got to be sheet-oriented, because from job to job, the paper changes. Right. And on a roll system, it's harder to do that. And most people today are seeing mostly short runs and quick turnarounds. And so you really need, and also the fact that the paper changes with each job. So that's why today, Inkjet has now finally matured to be in the market where commercial printers can apply it for commercial work.
So I'm really curious about the future of Inkjet versus toner technologies. What can we expect?
Well, they'll both exist. No technology ever dies. We're still using technology to go back 200 years. Toner invented the digital printing marketplace. It was an outgrowth of what copying machines did. And it allowed us to move forward in digital printing for smaller jobs. Anything that was sheet-oriented, 8.5 by 11, A4, that worked out great. And then the sheets got bigger. They got to 11/17, 12/18, 13 by 19, 14 by 20. And in some machines, by the way, they can make it even longer than that, but they can't expand in the other direction. So toner-based machines have been relegated to really smaller sheets when you get right down to it. Inkjet, however, doesn't have that limitation. Once they figured out how to stitch the heads together, the sheet could be as big as you wanted it to be. And so now that's why we're seeing the B1 and B2 machines evolve. So I think toner will stay at the level of books on demand, publications on demand, direct mail, things that lend themselves to the smaller sheet where you come out and you're just ready to go. Put it into the mail stream, ship it off or whatever. Inkjet will get us into the workflows and production approaches of commercial printers. And the advantage there will be that it dries immediately. It can go right to finishing. There's no make ready. You have all the advantages of a lights out kind of workflow. And I think that will allow Inkjet to expand into bigger jobs and therefore sort of dominate within the industry. So toner and Inkjet will still be there, and they still have an important role to play in commercial printing.
I want to ask you about your opinion on Konica Minolta's KM1.
I first saw the KM1 as a prototype in 2012 at Drupa. At that time, it was limited to special paper that you had to use, and there were some other issues with it. By the IPEC show 2 years later, it was doing much better. They were actually in the booth with Komori at that time. But at this recent Drupa in 2016, it was excellent. They modified the machine so that it now can handle any kind of paper. So if you're a commercial printer, you can use any paper you've been using for any job before without any pre-coating or special formulation. They've also reoriented the ink so it really has a look of offset lithography. Many of the inkjet inks have a gloss to them that's a little bit different than offset. And so the KM1 has done a very good job. So I consider it in really the top 3 machines in the industry that commercial printers should be looking at.
Do you see the KM1 generating new revenue opportunities for commercial printers?
Absolutely. You see, up to now, digital printing has been relegated to what I call the low end of the industry because the sheets were so small. So you really could do on-demand books, you could do commercial work of certain kinds like direct mail, and that was perfect. That was wonderful for digital printing to start with. But most printers don't print single sheets. They print big sheets with a lot of pages on them, and they're called signatures, of course. And we didn't have that with digital printing until companies started to expand it, and they couldn't do it with toner, so they did it with inkjet. And so the KM1, and by the way, that's a great name for the product because KM1 is easy to remember and say, and someday there could be a KM2 and a KM3, who knows, KM99. But the important thing is that they've reformulated the UV ink. It's not the UV ink printers think about in coating and traditional wide format and flatbed inkjet. It's a different formulation that gives a look that's very much like offset printing. And you can't do that easily. And that's what you needed. And so therefore, you have the larger sheet, you have the special ink, which allows you now to print on any kind of paper or canvas or special material in plastic, which opens up innumerable opportunities because now printers can do bigger jobs or what I like to call longer short-run jobs for commercial work and compete at the same level they were competing at with offset lithography. So I think it opens up unbelievable opportunities for commercial printers. So I think the market is going to burst within the next year or two.
So what would you say to those commercial printers that are considering getting into inkjet technology?
Well, now's the time because your competitors are going to have it. There's no doubt about it. And so don't wait until they lead the pack and you come in second and say, oh, here we are. You better get in fast because the market is changing very quickly. Now, the offset people are going to get mad at me, but we know that offset is changing and that the volume levels are going down. They're all trying to figure out a way to do faster make-readies. But there's only so much you can do on an offset press. You're still limited by certain functions you must perform. And you're going to have some level of waste. There's no doubt about it. I don't have any waste. I don't have any make-ready. That's the advantage of digital. So commercial printers, even if they keep their offset for the longer runs, are going to have to go digital. There's no doubt about it. The question is when, not if. And so are you going to wait? Or are you going to do it now where you can start to really compete in the marketplace?
Let's talk about MGI. You're familiar with MGI, correct?
Yes, I go back to when they first started and when they were doing photo books, which photo books were a big market at one point in time, and they did a fantastic job. And now they've grown into other on-demand products, and especially now in new kinds of decoration and embellishment.
So what do you think is the market potential for digital decorative printing?
By the way, that's a wonderful term, digital decoration, because that's what it's coming down to right now. This was a Konica Minolta, done on the MGI, of course, but it's just a mundane little notebook. But the important thing is that it has this wonderful embellishment on it, and you feel the texture of it. And this was done on the MGI. And this, to me, is fantastic to see this kind of stuff. It adds value. Here's a package that they were doing, and it makes this package so valuable. And so MGI has now moved into this embellishment market where they can do foil, they can do texture. I'm so impressed with what they're doing. And the machines are priced very well for the commercial market at a level that allows almost every printer to get into the technology. So in the old days, we used to have all this special finishing equipment to do die cutting and embossing and all that. But now we can do a lot of the embossing kind of look and the foil stamping without any of the special equipment. It's all now digital, which gives you phenomenal advantages. So I'm very impressed with what MGI has done.
What do you think is the future of packaging?
Oh, we definitely have a future for packaging because there's no other way to deliver a product. I mean, when I was a kid, you went to a store and if you wanted flour, you scooped it and put it into a bag. Well, now it comes in a package. And of course, half of everything we buy at the supermarket is on flexible film. So now we're moving in that direction. And if we're ever going to digitize all of that, that's going to be by inkjet. It's not going to be by offset or any kind of toner that I know of. So packaging is a main marketplace. It is most of what printers are going to print into the future.
So we've been told that only 5% of the entire foil market is digital. Do you see that changing anytime soon?
Oh, absolutely. By the way, it's only 5% right now because the methods for doing it were complicated. But now as we move into the future with new technologies being introduced like MGI, now we have the ability to do it in a much more efficient manner. And I think that opens up new markets. And whenever you open up a new market, whenever you add value to a printed piece, then the markets grow. I probably judge more printing competitions than anyone I know. And everyone says, if they're all high quality printers, how can you decide? Well, if you look at the winners, what you discover is they've all added some kind of embellishment to the piece. The customer wanted embellishment, and those are the ones that win. It has to do with the finishing, not so much as the printing.
So Frank, you've been predicting the future of print for over 20 years. So what's in store for the next 5 years?
Actually, I've been predicting it for 50 years.
Wow.
You can go back and look at all my reports and the things I've written. And I'm always fascinated with trying to see what's going to happen next. And that's why I do a lot of courses with my students on trying to analyze trends and look at where the industry is going. And if you look at where the industry is going, it's going beyond paper. It's going on to new materials. It's adding new kinds of embellishment. It's a new kind of printing that we haven't done before. Printing on new kinds of substrates, adding value to the printed piece, printing on plastic and glass and metal. These are the new markets that are evolving. So if you came back 10 years and we had this conversation again, I think we would see new kinds of machines that have evolved to print on new kinds of substrates.
Where is the real technology advancement coming from today?
I think it's coming from Japan. If you look at the developments, not only in toner, but in inkjet, and especially inkjet heads, a lot of our technology has come from Japan. They've done a phenomenal job. Again, there are pockets of development in the United States and Australia and other places, but Japan has done a phenomenal job. You go to Drupa, most of the machines that are really starting to take over the commercial marketplace have Japanese development roots over time. And I think we're going to see more of that.
So if you look at the technology in the marketplace today, what are you most excited about?
Well, anything involving digital printing, whether it's toner or inkjet, makes no difference to me because these are the two ways that digital printing can evolve. Now, there are even some fringe technologies out there that are being developed. Maybe they'll make it, maybe they won't. But for now, I think inkjet has the best chance of moving us into the future.
Customers of the commercial printers, what do you think they're demanding?
No, see, they don't demand. Customers of printing, the old-time print buyer, you knew them by the fact that they had a pocket protector and they had a loop, a magnifying glass that they carried around with them. And all they would do is look at dots. And that was their, if you met their quality standard based on what they remembered from the old offset world, then you could sell printing to them. The new print buyers tend to be younger, more flexible, tend to be more design-oriented to a large extent. And they're not tied to the same world that the old-timers were. The old-timers are dying off. And so today, the print buyers don't demand a lot because really the only thing they want is they want the job yesterday at a reasonable price because that's what their company is demanding. You have to go in and convince them, show them that the new things that we are doing give them an advantage in some way. And that's why the salespeople today have changed. The old days, the way you used to sell printing was you knocked on the door and said, do you want any printing today? Now you have to go in and show them what the new technology can do and hope that their imagination can take them to the next level. So it's really all about samples. So if you go to many commercial printers, as I was up in one in Maine recently, as far up in Maine as you can possibly go and still be in America, and I went into their sample room because whenever they go on a call, they go in and take a pile of samples and they show the customer what they can do. And that's the key to everything. So I think new technology allows you to produce new kinds of samples that excite the imagination of that customer.
Frank, what advice would you give to commercial printers to add value to print?
This is an important question. In 1995, I gave a speech to a group of printers, and I predicted that within 20 years there would be half as many printers in America. And I got booed for the first time ever. I got booed. They didn't believe that that would happen. Well, it has happened. We have half as many printers. And several reasons for that. The internet was one, PDF files another. But more than anything else, printers were killing themselves by continually lowering their prices, competing on price rather than on other aspects of the printing job. Today, they can't afford to do that anymore. They can't sell large volumes of very cheap printing. Sorry. And by the way, no one wants that anymore. Because if they want to do mass dissemination, they're going to do it with email blasts or Twitter or something like that. What we now see is that printers have to really look at shorter runs of higher volume, shorter runs of higher value. Leave that in there because some people will confuse volume and value. So that's the world we're coming into. Now the question is, how do you do that? Well, you can't do it with an offset press. I'm sorry, offset press manufacturers, that's the truth of the situation. There is a market for offset printing, and it will be there forever at probably longer runs. But when you get into shorter runs, you want to add value to them. So now I need to figure out a way to put embellishment, glitter, something on that sheet besides 4 inks or 5 inks or whatever it may be. That's going to be the secret, adding value to that piece of paper that someone is not buying printing, they're buying something that's valuable. And that's the key. And if you look at what's happening with technologies from all the companies in the digital world, they're going in that direction. So offset presses, there used to be an offset press that had foil on it. We don't see it anymore because it just didn't work the way the industry wanted to, even though it did a beautiful job. Today it's going to be digital in effect. So, thank God that there are vendors who are giving us the tools to be able to do this, which will help printers. And I think into the future, there'll still be some price competition, but it will be more on the companies that have the technologies that give us value to that piece of paper.
When commercial printers are assessing choosing a vendor to partner with, what's most important to them?
I think the biggest thing is support. Is this a company I can count on? Because a printer can't afford to be down. Many companies advertise how quickly they respond when there's a service call. But sometimes they're only telling you that they call you back within a certain period of time. They don't say that the service person actually shows up and can fix the machine. Because every hour a printer is down, that's money they're not making. So that's the biggest concern printers have. Is this a company I can trust to deal with? And so they look for companies that have equipment in other printing companies and try to find out how well they're doing with them. So that's the most important thing. Are you going to support your customers to the highest level? Because printers cannot wait for you to come. They can't be down for 2 days. It's just not going to happen.
What advice would you have for digital print manufacturers?
Well, to look at the marketplace and find out what printers need, and then look at what customers need. Because if you ask printers, they just want more of the same. Right. I mean, Henry Ford was once quoted, he said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. They would not have predicted a car. Right. So if we go into the future, what the manufacturers have to do is create machines that do different and new things, combining 3D printing with printing, combining printed electronics with printing, finding a way to take all these new esoteric areas that are evolving and bringing them into the mainstream.
Any other comments?
No, just keep doing what you're doing, and all will be successful for you and for the printers of America and the rest of the world.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much once again for meeting with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you. I love talking about technology.
Thank you.